Loki was unlike any other among the Aesir. He was neither a god nor a giant, yet he walked among them, laughing in the halls of Asgard, whispering secrets in Odin's ear and weaving mischief wherever he pleased. His origins were shrouded in mystery, born of the Jotun, Laufey and Fabretti, yet raised among the gods. His silver tongue and cunning mind made him both an asset and a threat, a being who could tip the scales of fate with a mere lie. Though Odin saw fit to make him his blood brother, trusting his wit and wisdom, the other gods were not so easily convinced. Thor, the mightiest of them all, often found himself at odds with Loki, who delighted in mocking him, deceiving him, and at times even aiding his enemies. But Loki was more than just a trickster. He was a shapeshifter, a schemer, a force of chaos that neither Asgard nor the Nine Realms could fully control. Not all of Loki's mischief ended in disaster, though. There was a time when his tricks brought great gifts to the gods. After a prank angered Thor, one that involved Loki cutting off the golden hair of Sif, Thor's wife, Loki was forced to make amends. He traveled to Svartalheim, the realm of the dwarves, seeking the most skilled craftsmen to forge new treasures. Through sly manipulation, he tricked the dwarves into forging wonders beyond compare. Sif's new golden hair, which flowed like the sunset itself, Gungnir, Odin's spear, which never missed its mark, Draupnir, a golden ring which multiplied itself endlessly, Skibaldnir, the finest ship able to fold itself into a small pouch, and Mjolnir, the mighty hammer of Thor and the greatest weapon of the gods. And yet, even as Loki's cunning brought power to Asgard, his deceit never ceased. He could not resist pushing boundaries even when it meant his own ruin. The moment that sealed Loki's fate came with the death of Baldur, the most beloved of the gods. Baldur, son of Odin and Frigg, was invincible. His mother had made every object in the world swear never to harm him, save for one small mistletoe branch. The gods, amused by his invulnerability, took to throwing weapons at him, watching them bounce harmlessly away. But Loki, ever watchful, discovered the one flaw in this magic, and so he fashioned a dart from the mistletoe and placed it in the hands of Hodur, Baldur's blind brother. With whispered guidance, Hodur cast the dart, unknowing that he had just killed his own kin. Baldur fell, and the laughter in Asgard died with him. Frigg pleaded for Baldur's return, and Hel, the ruler of the underworld, agreed if every being in the Nine Realms would weep for him. And they did. All but one. A lone figure, disguised and hidden, refused to shed a tear. And of course, it was Loki, ensuring that Baldur remained in Hel's domain forever. And with that act, Loki sealed his doom. The gods, now united in their hatred, hunted Loki down. He fled to a secluded mountain, disguising himself as a salmon and hiding beneath the rushing waters. But he could not escape. Thor, ever relentless, cast a great net, dragging Loki from his refuge and binding him in unbreakable chains. Odin decreed a punishment befitting his crime. Loki was bound beneath the earth, his body twisted and trapped with a venomous serpent placed above him. Its poison dripped onto his face, burning his flesh, sending him into horrible convulsions. His wife, Sigyn, remained by his side, catching the venom in a bowl, but when she turned away to empty it, Loki's agony shook the earth itself. Thus, the trickster lay in torment, waiting for the day of reckoning. Loki endured. The venom from the serpent continued to burn his flesh for many, many years, and his cries shook the mountain. Even in his suffering, he knew that his time would come. The gods believed they had silenced him forever, but they could not chain fate. The seers had spoken of Ragnarok, the end of all things, when Asgard itself would burn and the gods would fall. And when that day arrived, Loki would be free. The signs came as foretold. Fimbulwinter, a great endless cold, ripped the world. 3 winters passed without summer, and the bonds of kinship shattered. Brother turned against brother, father against son. The very fabric of the 9 realms began to unravel. And then, at long last, Loki's chains broke. The trickster emerged from the depths, his form twisted with years of torment, but his mind sharper than ever. He raced to Jotunheim, where the frost giants awaited, and to the depths of the sea where his monstrous children stirred. He stood for the armies of chaos and called them to war. Loki took his place among the enemies of Asgard. He stood beside Surtur, the fire giant whose sword blazed like the sun. He rode alongside the legions of hell, the dead warriors who had waited for their moment of vengeance. And at the helm of Naglfar, the ship of the dead, Loki sailed towards the final battle, his heart alight with rage and purpose. The gods had cast him out, and now he would watch them burn. The battlefield stretched beneath blackened skies as the gates of Asgard were shattered. The ground trembled beneath the thunder of war, gods and giants and monsters and men all locked in battle. Thor faced Jormungand, the world serpent, Loki's own spawn. Odin rose to face the wolf Fenrir, another of Loki's children, knowing he would not return. The heavens roared as gods clashed with the forces of destruction. And in the chaos, Loki found Heimdall. The watchman of Asgard had long stood against Loki's schemes, his piercing gaze ever watchful. Now, the 2 men met in battle, their hatred as old as the 9 realms themselves. Steel clashed, blood was spilled, and the gods themselves held their breath. Loki was no warrior, but his cunning was a weapon sharper than any blade. He dodged, weaved, and struck where Heimdall least expected. But Heimdall was relentless, his spear finding its mark again and again. But after the long duel, Loki drove his dagger into Heimdall's side, smirking in victory, until Heimdall's sword pierced his own heart. As Loki lay dying, the world crumbled around him. Surtur raised his flaming sword, setting the world ablaze, and Asgard, the great city of the gods, was no more. Thor, son of Odin and Jord, was the mightiest warrior of the Norse gods. Armed with Mjolnir, his legendary hammer, and clad in iron gloves and a girdle that doubled his strength, he was Asgard's greatest protector. His duty was clear: to safeguard the gods and mortals from the giants and the chaos that threatened the 9 realms. Yet Thor was more than a warrior. He was a god of the people, revered by farmers, warriors, and kings alike. He was a force of nature, the living embodiment of thunder, strength, and justice. But even the strongest gods were not without trials. One of Thor's greatest trials came when he traveled to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, with Loki and the servant Fjallvi. They sought hospitality from Loki, a cunning giant king who ruled a great hall of magic and deception. Upon their arrival, Loki mocked Thor, doubting his legendary might. To prove himself, Thor agreed to 3 challenges. First, he had to drain a drinking horn that giants often drank from. He took great gulps, but no matter how much he drank, the horn never emptied. Next, he was challenged to lift a massive grey cat. Thor strained, veins bulging, yet he could barely lift one paw. Finally, he was told to wrestle an old woman named Ellie. She looked frail, but as they grappled, Thor found himself overwhelmed, driven to one knee in defeat. Humiliated, Thor and his companions prepared to leave, but before they did, Utgard Loki revealed the truth. Everything had been an illusion. The drinking horn had been filled with the ocean, and Thor had nearly drained it. The cat was actually Jormungand, the world serpent, whom Thor had almost lifted from the sea, and the old woman was old age itself, and no one could defeat time. Enraged at the deception, Thor reached for Mjolnir, but before he could strike, Utgard Loki and his haul vanished into thin air, leaving Thor fumed in the empty plains of Jotunheim. This trial had humbled the god of thunder, proving that even he could be deceived by forces beyond raw strength. But Thor's battles were far from over. Returning home, Thor's humiliation in Utgard Loki's hall only fueled his thirst for battle. He had come closer than any god to lifting Jormungand, the great serpent that encircled Midgard, but he had been denied a true confrontation, and that would change soon enough. After a few years, disguised as a mortal fisherman, Thor sought out the giant Heimir, a grim and powerful being who possessed an enchanted ox, perfect for bait. The two set sail into the dark sea, beyond the waves where mortal men dared not to go. Thor cast his fishing line, baited with the head of Heimir's ox, and waited. Then, the ocean roared. The waves churned, and a monstrous force snapped onto the line, nearly dragging Thor overboard. But he held fast. Jormungand had risen. The serpent's massive coils writhed against the churning sea, its glowing eyes locking onto the god. It opened its fanged mouth with poison dripping into the waters, hissing at the end of all things. Thor roared in defiance, tightening his grip. Summoning all of his might, he hauled the serpent from the depths, its endless form rising toward the sky. Then thunder cracked. The storm god reached for Mjolnir and prepared to end the beast before Ragnarok could come. But before Thor could strike, Heimir panicked. Terrified of the apocalyptic battle that was about to unfold, the giant cut the fishing line, and the great serpent slipped beneath the waves, vanishing into the abyss. Thor's fury was unmatched. He struck Heimir, sending him crashing overboard, and rowed back to shore alone, the promise of a final battle against Jormungand burning into his mind. Thor's rage against the giants never waned. When he heard that the giant Hrungnir had entered Asgard, challenging the gods with arrogance and threats, Thor returned home and demanded battle. They met in single combat, Hrungnir wielding a monstrous stone shield and an immense whetstone as a weapon. The earth trembled as the two warriors clashed. Thor hurled Mjolnir, but at the same time Hrungnir cast his whetstone, and the two weapons collided in midair, shattering the whetstone in a storm of shards. One such shard pierced Thor's forehead, embedding itself in his skull. But Mjolnir struck true. Hrungnir's head was obliterated, his massive body collapsing lifeless on the battlefield. Though victorious, Thor was wounded, and the whetstone lodged deep within his flesh. It would never fully leave him, a scar from his eternal war against the giants. Many years later, Thor's ultimate fate was written in prophecy, and when Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, arrived, he would face Jormungand one last time. The battle would shake the 9 realms, and their clash would be so fierce that mountains would crumble and the sky itself would tear. Thor would finally slay the world serpent, but not before its venom claimed him. With his final breath, the god of thunder would take 9 steps before falling dead, his greatest victory and his inevitable doom intertwined. And yet, even in death, Thor's legacy would endure. His sons, Magni and Modi, would inherit Mjolnir and survive Ragnarok, carrying their father's strength into the next age of gods and men. Thor was more than a warrior. He was a defender, a protector, and a force of nature itself. His legend, forged in thunder and blood, would echo across time, a reminder that even in the face of fate, the greatest warriors never yield, nor do they give up on their ambitions. The winds howled across the vast plains of Asgard, carrying the whispers of fate and war. At its heart stood Odin, the All-Father, seated upon his high throne in Valskjalf, his piercing gaze stretching across the 9 realms. 2 ravens, Hugin and Munnin, perched upon his shoulders whispering secrets gathered from distant lands. 2 wolves, Geri and Freki, lay at his feet, their golden eyes ever watchful. Odin was not merely a king, he was the architect of the world, the weaver of destinies and the seeker of knowledge. He had built Asgard, forged alliances and carved his name into the very fabric of reality, and yet power alone was not enough. Knowledge, wisdom, and foresight, these were the tools that would allow him to rule beyond mere strength. Long before Odin sat upon his throne, he had sought wisdom beyond all else. He knew that strength could win battles, but wisdom would win wars before they even began. So he ventured to Mimir's well, the sacred spring at the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. This well held waters of infinite wisdom, guarded by Mimir, an ancient being of unparalleled knowledge. Odin approached and demanded a drink. Mimir studied him and spoke. "All knowledge has a price, Odin. If you would drink from my well, you must sacrifice something of equal value." Without hesitation, Odin plucked out his own eye and cast it into the well. The pain was blinding, but as the waters of wisdom touched his lips, his mind expanded beyond mortal comprehension. He saw strands of fate twisting and turning, the destinies of gods and men unfolding before him. And he saw Ragnarok, the end of all things, and knew that no throne, no army, and no magic would be enough to stop it. Wisdom was one thing. True power required understanding. Odin knew that the greatest magic in existence lay in the runes, the ancient symbols that held the secrets of creation, destruction, and everything in between. But they would not be given freely. And so Odin hung himself from the branches of Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights, wounded by his own spear. No food, no water, only pain, suffering, and eventually enlightenment. As he dangled over the void, the runes revealed themselves to him, their meaning burning into his mind. When at last he fell from the tree, he was no longer just Odin the king. He was Odin the wise, the sorcerer, and the master of runes. But this power came with a burden. Odin had seen Ragnarok. and it still remained inevitable. With the newfound wisdom and power coursing through his veins, Odin knew that he could not avert Ragnarok, but he could prepare. The twilight of gods would come, and when it did, the survival of the world would depend on what he did now, or so he believed. Odin gathered the greatest warriors in the 9 realms, welcoming the fallen into Valhalla. He commanded the Valkyries, celestial maidens, to scour the battlefield for those who died with honor, selecting only the bravest to fight alongside the gods in their final stand. Not only was Odin preparing for war, he was also shaping the destiny of his people. He sirened many children, each born to play a role in the great cosmic struggle. Thor, the Thunderer, would be Asgard's mightiest warrior. Baldur, the Pure, was beloved by all, a symbol of hope. Even Loki, the Trickster, though untrustworthy, had a place in Odin's plans. The chaos itself could be a weapon if wielded wisely. But as Odin spent many years preparing for this war, his pursuit of wisdom had isolated him from his kin. His wife, Frigg, saw his obsession and feared what it would bring. His son Baldur's death, orchestrated by Loki, tore his heart in two. And still, Odin marched forward, always searching, always preparing, knowing that his doom had already been written. The prophecies spoke clearly. Ragnarok would come and Odin would fall, but his people still had a chance in his mind. The wolves, Skoll and Heiti, would devour the sun and the moon, plunging the world into darkness. The seas would rise and the earth would quake, and the great serpent Jormungand would awaken, and the fire giant Surtur would march from Muspelheim, his sword burning brighter than the sun. And eventually, Odin would ride into battle one last time. And when that day arrived, Odin led the Aesir against the enemies. Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, broke free from his chains and charged towards him. Even as the battle raged, Odin knew his fate was coming. He fought with all his might, but Fenrir was an unstoppable force. The great wolf snapped its jaws around Odin, swallowing him whole. The All-Father, seeker of wisdom, weaver of fate, was gone. But Odin knew that this would happen. His death was not in vain. Thor, though poisoned by Jormungand's venom, slew the world serpent. Heimdall and Loki clashed, ending each other in combat, and Surtur's flames engulfed the world, bringing destruction and with it, rebirth. Odin had foreseen everything, and he had ensured that life would continue. Two mortals, Life and Leifrasir, hidden away in the depths of Yggdrasil, would survive and repopulate the world. His sons, Vidar and Vali, lived on, bearing his wisdom and strength. The cycle would begin again. Odin had spent his existence seeking wisdom, knowledge, and control, but in the end, he had to accept the ultimate truth, that even gods must die. And yet, through his planning and sacrifice, he ensured that something greater would rise from the ashes. Odin was gone, but his legend would never fade. In the far reaches of Asgard, where the rainbow bridge, Bifrost, touched the sky and arced into the mortal realm, stood a lone figure, Heimdall, the ever-watchful sentinel of the gods. His post was unyielding, his gaze unblinking, and his purpose woven tightly into the fate of the 9 realms. Heimdall was born of 9 mothers, sisters who were sea maidens, daughters of Aegir and Ran, the old gods of the ocean. From their union came a child of paradox, one of storm and silence, vigilance and mystery. Raised by the gods, Heimdall was gifted with sight and hearing so profound he could see 100 leagues by day or night and hear the grass grow in Midgard, even the wool sprouting on the sheep. He was not a warrior of thunder or flame, but a god of awareness, the first line of defense against chaos, and in many ways the final arbiter of its coming. His station was not chosen lightly. The gods feared the eventual arrival of Ragnarok, the fated end of all things, and it was Heimdall who would serve as the hornblower, the one who would signal the beginning of the end. In his possession rested Gjallarhorn, the resonant instrument whose call would echo through the 9 realms when the time would come. But Heimdall's life was not only about waiting for doom. For eons, Heimdall stood guard at the gates of Asgard, watching travelers and interlopers alike. He was not merely a guard, but a gatekeeper of balance. He judged those who approached the Bifrost with a mind as sharp as a blade, allowing only those worthy or sanctioned to pass into the realm of the gods. He saw beyond the surface, into intentions, into futures. He saw the shade of Loki's tricks before they played out, the ripple of fate before it unfolded. And though he was stoic and dutiful, he was never indifferent. The other gods admired his discipline, though few truly understood it. Heimdall was not made for revelry or feasts. He did not laugh as Thor did, nor whisper riddles like Odin. And yet, in moments of silence, even the mightiest gods looked to Heimdall, for they knew that if he stirred, the world itself might soon shift. Heimdall's greatest conflict, however, lay not in watching, but in knowing. He alone saw the threads of Ragnarok winding tighter each century. He alone glimpsed the flicker of betrayal in Loki's heart long before the trickster's crimes were unveiled. And yet, his duty was not to intervene, only to watch, to wait, and to sound the horn when the moment could no longer be delayed. Once a brother to the gods, Loki's path eventually twisted into bitterness and pride, his cleverness curdling into malice, and Heimdall saw it all. He warned Odin in subtle words and firm silences. He tracked the rising unease in Loki's shifting alliances, the sly disappearances and the half-truths. But the Allfather, ever weaving his own secret plans, hesitated to act. In Odin's eyes, Loki still had a role to play in the pattern of fate. In Heimdall's eyes, he was the crack in the wall of Asgard. And still, Heimdall did not raise Gjallarhorn. Not yet. Loki's betrayals mounted, the theft of Sif's hair, and the schemes against Baldur, and finally, the great wound, the death of Baldur himself, engineered by Loki's hand, hidden behind a blind god and a sprig of mistletoe. The light of Asgard dimmed. The gods mourned, and Heimdall clenched his fist at the gates of the Bifrost, his breath low and his gaze locked on the horizon. Loki fled, of course. Shackled by fate, he would be found and bound beneath the earth with serpent-stripping venom upon his face. But Heimdall knew it would not hold forever. And then at last, the day arrived. The skies blackened and the world tree groaned. The dead marched from hell, led by Loki, finally freed with his twisted children in tow. Fenrir the wolf and Jormungandr the world serpent, and of course, Hel, the queen of the underworld. The frost giants poured into Jotunheim, the heavens shook and the seas boiled, and Heimdall, standing upon the Bifrost, raised Gjallarhorn. Its sound shattered mountains. It woke the sleepers, and it pierced the heart of creation. Across the 9 realms, every being divine and mortal knew the time had come. The gods armed themselves, heroes marched to their dooms, and Heimdall, solemn and resolute, stepped into battle. He met Loki, not on a field but in the ruins of their shared past, with Asgard burning behind them and Midgard trembling beneath. They fought, not as strangers, but as inevitabilities, 2 forces that had always moved towards each other, bound by prophecy and by choice. Heimdall's sword met Loki's fire and they danced through death, a grim, bitter ballet of blade and spell, duty and chaos. And in the end, both fell. Loki died with a sneer on his lips, and Heimdall, bleeding and broken, died with silence in his throat, but peace in his heart. The horn had been sounded and the warning had been given. His duty had been fulfilled. When the smoke of Ragnarok cleared and the worlds lay in ash and water, Heimdall's memory endured. In the new world, where gods would be reborn and the earth would flourish once more, his tale was whispered in reverence. The god who heard everything, the sentinel who never slept, the one who gave all, so others may see the dawn. He was not the loudest, but his role had been vital. Without Heimdall, Ragnarok would have come unannounced, sudden and total. But thanks to him, the gods fought with honor, and some, like Baldur, would return. The bridge was gone, but the idea of Heimdall remained, a symbol of vigilance, of sacrifice, and of seeing the truth, even when no one else would. And so, Heimdall, son of 9 mothers, guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, enemy of the deceit, and the final match of the trickster, stood forever in the minds of gods and men, not just as the Watcher, but as the unsung heart of Asgard's last stand. In the shadowed corners of Norse myth, beyond the thunder of gods and the clash of giants, there lies a figure seldom spoken of in revelry or song. Her name is Hel, daughter of Loki, sister to Fenrir the wolf, and Jormungand, the world serpent and sovereign of a kingdom no god dares to claim. She was born of chaos, a child of a frost giantess, Angerboda, and the ever-twisting trickster, Loki. From her first breath, Hel was not like other children. Half of her body was living flesh, pale and youthful, while the other half was blackened and rotting, as if death had already made its claim. The gods, horrified and uncertain, brought her to Asgard, not with celebration but with suspicion. Odin, ever wary of prophecy, foresaw a grim fate in the children of Loki, while Fenrir grew monstrous and Jormungand too large to dwell on land. Hel's danger lay in her stillness. She did not rage, she did not roar, she simply watched. Odin, wise and yet often cruel, made a decision that would shape the destiny of the dead. He cast Hel down into the deep and shadowed realm of Niflheim, giving her dominion over those who did not die gloriously in battle. And so, Hel became Queen of Helheim, the realm named for her, a land of cold mists, endless twilight, and slow, endless silence, where the souls of the old, the sick, and the forgotten wandered after death, not as punishment but as inevitability. She did not torment them, she simply kept them. Unlike the fiery tortures of Christian hell, Hel's realm was not one of judgment. but of stillness. Here the dead found a kind of peace, if cold and somber. Her hall, Elionir, stood at the center of this realm, its gates ever open, yet offering no escape. Her dish was hunger, her knife famine, and her bed sickness. Symbolic, perhaps, but true to the slow erosion of life she governed. The gods continued to fear her, not for what she did, but for what she represented. She was the end of all things, the unavoidable destination for all who were not chosen by Odin or taken by Freya. Even the mightiest warriors, if they died not in battle, passed through her gates, and she still did not bargain. She didn't plea, she simply ruled. And yet, despite the solitude of her realm, Hel watched the world above with interest. She saw the folly of gods, the cycles of men, and the strange movements of fate. Unlike her siblings whose destruction was foretold, Hel's role was subtle and enduring. She did not rush towards Ragnarok. She simply waited. The turning point in Hel's story comes not with fire or war, but with sorrow. Baldur, the beloved son of Odin and Frigg, the shining god of light and purity, was slain, unwittingly killed by his blind brother, manipulated by Loki. The Aesir were devastated. Baldur was not only loved by all, but was also a symbol of hope, of a future unmarred by war, and his death marked the very first crack in the foundation of the gods' world. When Baldur's spirit descended into Helheim, it passed through gates no strength could break, into the cold halls where even gods tread lightly. There, Hel received him not with malice, but with dignity. She gave Baldur a place of honor, not because he was a god, but because he was mourned with such sincerity. The gods, desperate, sent Hermodr, Odin's son, to ride to Helheim on Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse. He rode for 9 nights through darkness until he stood before Hel herself, pleading for Baldur's release. Moved not by emotion, but by principle, Hel offered a condition. If every living thing in the world wept for Baldur, then she would release him. It was a fair offer. It was, in her own way, just. And the world wept, stones, trees, gods, and men alike. But one creature did not. A giantess named Thok, who many believed was Loki in disguise. And so, Hel, true to her word, kept Baldur in her realm. She had no interest in vengeance. She simply upheld the balance. Death, once sealed, was not so easily undone. As the final age approached and Ragnarok loomed, Hel's place in the tapestry of fate became clear. She would not march at the front of the armies of the damned, but her role was no less vital. At the end of days, Hel would open her gates wide. From her realm, she would unleash the dead, led by Loki himself, returned from imprisonment to command a ship built from the fingernails of the dead, Naglfar. Together, they would sail against the gods. Hel didn't ride beside them. She remained in her realm, for her throne was not built of war but of eternity. And yet, her influence was undeniable. She had kept the fallen, watched their slumber, and now in the twilight of the gods, she allowed them to rise. Whether she survived Ragnarok is unclear. Some say that her realm endured, as death always does, reshaped in the new world to come. Others claim she vanished, her purpose fulfilled, and her shadow fading as the cosmos was reborn. In the end, Hel is not remembered with fear alone. She is the figure of inevitable truth, the quiet answer to life's loudest questions. She embodies not wrath, but stillness, not punishment, but the reality that not all heroes die in glory. She is the gatekeeper of finality, but not cruelty. Unlike Odin or Thor, she did not seek battle. Unlike Loki, she did not chase chaos, she simply ruled what was hers and fulfilled her duty. The forgotten, the fallen, the ones who slipped through fate's fingers. And in the cold mists of Niflheim, perhaps she still waits. Baldur was the most radiant of all the Norse gods, the son of Odin, all-father of the Aesir and Frigg, the goddess of foresight and motherhood. His presence alone could bring peace to a troubled heart. Fair of face, just in judgment and beloved by all, Baldur embodied something good in the Nine Realms. Light was not just his domain, but his essence. He shone with a brilliance that could not be dimmed, or so it seemed. Even among the gods, Baldur was unique. He had no enemies, plants turned toward him, animals softened in his presence, and men sang songs of his kindness. The halls of Asgard were brighter because of him, and his words often tempered the wrath of warriors and gods alike. He was, in many ways, the soul of Asgard. And yet, gods are never free from fate. And in dreams, that fate came calling. One night, Baldur began to have visions, dark dreams foretelling his own death. They were not mere nightmares, but warnings carried on the wings of prophecy. Frigg, sensing the truth in her son's terror, was struck with dread. She vowed that she would not let fate claim him so easily. And so, she went forth across the Nine Realms and extracted promises from all things: fire, water, earth, stone, metal, beasts, disease, and weapons, not to harm her son. Every living and non-living thing, from serpents to poison, swore an oath to never hurt Baldur. All, that is, except one. She overlooked mistletoe, considering it too small and harmless to bother with. With this divine immunity in place, the gods made a game of Baldur's invincibility. In the halls of Gladsheim, they would hurl spears and stones at him, laughing as each object bounced off without so much as a scratch. The gods rejoiced, and they believed they had conquered fate. But one watched from afar with very different thoughts. Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, and the constant outsider. Whether moved by envy or spite or simply the desire to see the threads of fate unravel, Loki devised a plan to pierce Baldur's protection. Disguised as an old woman, Loki approached Frigg and through clever questions learned of the one thing that had not sworn an oath: mistletoe. And with that knowledge, Loki's mischief turned to malice. He fashioned a dart crafted entirely from mistletoe, and approached Baldur's blind brother, Hodor, who stood by during the gods' games, unable to join in. Loki offered him the dart and guided his hands, and in that moment, the moment of the throw, everything began to change. The mistletoe dart flew, guided by Loki's treacherous hand, through Hodor's innocent strength. It struck Baldur in the heart, and where all else had failed to pierce him, this slender branch succeeded. The laughter of the gods turned to gasps. Time seemed to halt in the Golden Hall. Baldur fell, and the light that had shone so brightly in Asgard flickered and died. There was no battle, no thunderclap, no great war, just a single throw, silent, small, and devastating. The gods rushed to him, but nothing could be done. Baldur's body lay lifeless, and the halls of the gods were draped in sorrow. Never before had Asgard known such grief. Even Odin, the All-Father, whose one eye had seen the vastness of fate, wept for his son. Freyg's cries echoed through the 9 realms, and none who heard them were untouched. From that point onwards, the world grew colder. Colors dimmed, and birds ceased to sing. In desperation, Odin descended into Helheim, the realm of the dead, to seek wisdom from the seeress who once prophesied the fate of the gods. She confirmed what he already feared. Baldur's death was no accident. It was the first true sign of Ragnarok, the beginning of the end. But Frigg had not given up hope. She begged the gods to send a messenger to plead with Hel, the goddess who ruled the dead, to release Baldur, and to his dismay, nobody could bring Baldur back. And so, the god of light remained in the shadowy realm of death. As rage replaced grief, vengeance came swiftly. Hodor, the blind brother, though innocent in intent, was slain by Vali, a son of Odin conceived for this very purpose. And Loki, whose mischief had turned to malice, was hunted, captured, and bound in chains beneath the earth, with the serpent's venom dripping onto his face, a torment that would continue until the end of days. And yet, even in Helheim, Baldur's tale was not over. For prophecy foretells that after Ragnarok, when the fires of the world had subsided and the old gods had fallen, Baldur returned. He and his brother Hodor would walk once again among the living, ruling over a new world, bright, green, and reborn from the ash. And thus, Baldur became more than just a god of light. He became a symbol of hope, a promise that even after death, even after ruin, light will rise again. Among the pantheon of Norse gods, no figure shines with such fierce and paradoxical light as Freya, the goddess who embodied both sensual beauty and battlefield fury. Daughter of Njord, the sea god of the Vanir and sister to Freyja, she stood at the crossroads of 2 divine families, the Vanir and the Aesir, and became a symbol of power, mystery, and desire. From the moment she arrived in Asgard as part of a fragile truce between 2 rival godly clans, the gods were awestruck. Her golden hair flowed like sunlight over fields of grain, and her eyes held both tenderness and tempest. And yet, behind her beauty lay depth and danger. Freya was not merely an object of desire. She was a wielder of Seidr, the deepest and most feared magic of the Norse world. With it, she could manipulate fate, twist minds, and peer into destinies. She taught Odin himself this ancient art, forever binding their fates. But while Odin sought knowledge through sacrifice, Freya's power came from passion, grief, and resilience. One of the most enduring stories of Freya centers on her most prized possession, Brisingamen, a necklace of unparalleled beauty forged by 4 dwarves in their smoky forges deep within the earth. When Freya beheld the necklace, she was entranced. It shimmered like starlight, like desire made tangible. The dwarves demanded a steep price, not gold nor gems, but a night with each of them. Freya, recognizing the necklace's worth not just as ornament, but as a conduit of magic and strength, agreed. She returned to Asgard with Brisingamen around her neck, radiant and unrepentant. The gods whispered, but none dared challenge her. Her choices were her own, and that autonomy, so rare in god or mortal, only added to her mystique. And yet, envy followed Freya like a shadow. Loki, ever the troublemaker, once stole the necklace while she slept and bought it before Odin. In some tellings, he demanded Freya spark a war among mortals to earn it back, a cruel price for vanity. But Freya, cunning as she was proud, set the world alight and retrieved her necklace no less dignified for it. And while Freya often remembered for love, beauty, and fertility, her role as a war goddess was no less vital in the times to come. She rode a chariot drawn by cats, but her gaze was as sharp as any spear. In every battle, she claimed half the slain, guiding them not to Valhalla but to Folkvaga, her own hall. There, the brave dead found peace not through endless combat, but through rest, revelry, and the eternal embrace of the goddess who honored their courage. This dual nature, lover and fighter, comforter and destroyer, made Freya unlike any other deity. She was not bound by others' expectations or roles. She mourned, she burned, she healed, and she ruled. For all of her pleasures and passions, there was one longing she could never quite quell: the loss of her husband, Thor. Thor was a mysterious figure often thought to be connected to Odin himself, perhaps a distant reflection or even an earlier form of the All-Father. Regardless of his nature, he was Freya's great love, and he also vanished into the distant realms, leaving her bereaved. In her grief, Freya wandered across the 9 realms, searching endlessly. Her tears fell as drops of red gold, staining the earth and the sea with beauty born of anguish. Even among gods, her mourning was unmatched, proof that love could wound even the divine. And yet, this heartbreak didn't break her, it became part of her power. Unlike many gods, Freya embraced every emotion, love and rage, joy and despair, and her depth made her magic so formidable, and her power continued to be fueled by both light and darkness. However, like all gods of Asgard, Freya's fate was intertwined with Ragnarok, the great and final battle. Though myths focus largely on Odin, Thor, and Loki, Freya's role was equally vital. As the goddess who claimed half the slain, she was surrounded by warriors of her own, heroes who would fight, not for prophecy, but for honor and love. Some tales say that she stood at the edge of battle, golden hair blood-soaked, wielding her magic like a sword. Others suggest she faced the flames of destruction with calm defiance, welcoming the world's end not as a defeat but as transformation, a renewal, like the endless cycle of love and death. What becomes of Freya after Ragnarok is not clearly told. Some say that she survives, her realm untouched, a testament to the enduring nature of desire and strength. Others believe that she is reborn, as love always is, through chaos and fire. In the modern world, Freya's name endures. Freya's day marks her independence in time itself. But more than that, her myth remains a symbol of the divine feminine in its fullest expression. Wild, wise, passionate, grieving, and sovereign. She is not the obedient wife, nor the wrathful virgin, nor the distant queen. Freya is all of these things and none of them. She is the golden flame that seduces, scars, and survives. She rides still in the echoes of thunder and the purr of cats, in dreams of love, too fierce to tame, and in every heart that dares to love and mourn with equal courage. In the high skies of Asgard and across the blood-soaked fields of Midgard, they rode like storm winds, swift, silent, and sovereign. They were the Valkyries, Odin's handmaidens, and yet far more than mere servants. They were death's gentle touch, and war's fierce glory, the divine arbiters of fate. Each Valkyrie was a vision of strength and grace, clad in armor that shimmered like northern lights, with winged helms and spears that gleamed. They descended upon battlefields not as angels of mercy, but as judges of destiny. Their duty was to choose which warriors lived and which would die. The Valkyries were not born of mortal wombs. They emerged from the will of Odin himself, conjured by the All-Father to serve a greater cause. But they were not mindless extensions of his power. Each Valkyrie had a name, a voice, and a purpose. Brynhildr, Sigrun, Gondol, Skolgul, and many more. They rode through thunder on steeds that galloped across the sky and sea alike. While Odin led from above, it was the Valkyries who stood among the dying and whispered the final words into a warrior's ears. A soft touch to the brow, and the chosen soul would rise, not in pain but in pride, to be carried to Valhalla, the golden hall of fallen heroes. These honored dead would feast and train for the final war, Ragnarok, where Odin would call forth the battle once again. To mortals, Valkyries were both terrifying and wondrous. Some warriors claim to have seen them moments before death, figures of radiant beauty, eyes like winter stars, faces neither cruel nor kind, and others believed their mere presence could change fate itself. A glance from a Valkyrie could shift a doomed man to glory, or vice versa. But not all who saw Valkyries died. There are stories, rare and powerful, of Valkyries falling in love with mortal men. When these warrior maidens chose to forsake Asgard, they became mortal themselves, bound by love and sorrow. One such tale is that of Brynhildr, a Valkyrie who defied Odin by saving a life he had marked for death. For her disobedience, she was cast from Asgard, imprisoned in a ring of fire, and cursed to sleep until a worthy hero braved the flames to claim her. It was in these moments that the Valkyries showed their duality, not just fierce agents of fate, but women who could weep, love, and even defy the gods. So Brynhildr's tale echoed as one of the most haunting and human among the Valkyrie. After her punishment, she was awakened by the mortal hero Sigurd, who passed through the flames to claim her as his bride. For a time, she knew joy beyond the cold halls of the gods, and yet fate, as it often does in Norse myth, was cruel and unbending. Sigurd was deceived, his love stolen by treachery and magic. Brynhildr, betrayed and filled with grief, brought about her own death and that of Sigurd. In their tragic end, the line between mortal and divine blurred. The mighty Valkyrie, once above men, reduced to heartbreak and vengeance. And yet, Brynhildr's defiance remained etched into legend, a testament to the fact that even those closest to the gods could shape destiny, if only briefly. In Asgard, they served as cupbearers in Valhalla, offering mead to the fallen heroes who trained tirelessly for Ragnarok. They sang songs of valor and honored the dead with feasts and memory. They were both warriors and mourners, celebrating life even as they presided over death. Some sagas claim that Valkyries had prophetic abilities, where they could glimpse into the threads of fate before they were woven. This foresight made them more than mere agents of Odin's will. It made them his advisors, whispering omens and secrets from the battlefield into the god's ear, and that purpose would find itself at the final crescendo of Ragnarok, the end of all things. When the world would burn and the gods would fall, it was the Valkyries who would lead the Einherjar, the chosen dead, onto the field of the last war. They would ride into the twilight like comets, no longer just observers or messengers of death, but as active warriors in the final stance of existence. The sky would tear open with the sound of hoofbeats, and the last breath of the cosmos would be accompanied by the cries of these immortal women. And yet, even in the doom-laden prophecy, the Valkyries hold a strange hope. For if the world ends, it may also be reborn, and perhaps in that new dawn, they too will ride again, not to choose who dies, but to witness what survives. Long before the first sun rose over Midgard, in the shadowed corners of Yggdrasil's roots, a serpent was born of giant blood and chaos. His name was Jormungand, the middle child of the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angrboda. And from the moment of his birth, he was feared by gods and giants alike. Loki's children were not ordinary beings. Each one was marked by fate. Fenrir, the great wolf, Hel, the ruler of the underworld, and Jormungand, the serpent destined to grow so vast that he would one day stretch across the world. Odin, all-father and wary master of fate, saw them omens of doom. Seeking to prevent catastrophe, he cast Jormungand into the sea that surrounds Midgard. There, the serpent did not die. He thrived. Fed by the deepest trenches and ancient magics, Jormungand grew larger with each passing age. His body stretched beyond comprehension until, at last, he circled the entire world. His own tail slipped into his mouth, not as a symbol of harmony, but as an omen of eternal return. A cycle that could never be broken. The seas soon became his domain. Storms followed in his wake. Fishermen spoke of unnatural whirlpools and great scales beneath the waves. Sailors who strayed too far from land vanished, and their ships shattered by something no mortal eye could see. Jormungand was no mere beast. He was a force, a living boundary between the known and the unknown. Of all the gods, none hated Jormungand more than Thor, the thunder god and slayer of monsters. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps it was instinct, but the two were destined to clash from the start. Thor, being the protector of Midgard, viewed the serpent as a blight, a monstrous threat to mortals. Jormungand, born of Loki's chaos blood, saw Thor as the greatest enemy to his kind. And the first confrontation came not on a battlefield, but aboard a humble boat. Disguised as a fisherman, Thor set out with the giant Heimir, casting his line far into the sea. As bait, Thor used the head of an ox, and what he caught was no ordinary fish. From the depths rose Jormungand, awakened by the scent of blood and the echo of prophecy. His body towered above the waves, and Thor, never one to flee, wrapped his hands around the serpent's jaw and prepared to strike. Thunder cracked. The sky turned black. The sea frothed and boiled as Thor lifted his hammer, Mjolnir, to slay the serpent. But before the final blow could fall, Heimir, terrified beyond reason, cut the line. Jormungand vanished beneath the waves, wounded in pride. but still alive. From that moment on, their destinies were tied. The gods spoke in hushed tones of Ragnarok, the final battle, when Thor and Jormungand would meet again, and neither would survive. As centuries passed, the world serpent remained beneath the waves, coiled in silence. Though unseen, he was never forgotten. His existence haunted the gods of Asgard, a looming shadow over their golden halls. They knew what the prophecy foretold, and Jormungand's final rise would signal the twilight of the gods. The Norns, weavers of fate, had already written the outcome in the roots of Yggdrasil. The moment the serpent released its tail, the end would begin. The first tremors came when Loki broke free from his bonds and led a rebellion against the gods. Hell unleashed the dead from Niflheim. Fenrir, now grown immense, broke his chains and bared fangs towards the sky. And from the depths of the ocean, Jormungand stirred. With a deafening roar, he uncoiled. Tidal waves engulfed coastlines. The oceans surged with unnatural fury as the serpent rose higher than any mountain. Wrapping his immense body through the clouds and above the earth, he had grown so vast that no eye could take his full form. The mere movements of his coils cracked continents and stirred lightning from the heavens. It was then that Thor, the hammer wielder, rode into battle aboard his chariot pulled by two goats. The sky split with thunder, and Midgard itself quaked beneath the weight of what was coming. For Thor, this was the moment carved into his fate, his ultimate battle, not for glory, but for survival. And when Thor met Jormungand among the battlefield of Vigrid, the earth stilled. All who witnessed it knew they were seeing the collision of two unstoppable forces. The serpent hissed, venom thick and corrosive, spilling from his fangs like rivers. Thor hurled Mjolnir again and again, shattering scale and sinew, each strike sending shockwaves through the 9 realms. But Jormungand fought back with equal fury. His massive coils crushed warriors and gods alike. His venom darkened the skies, blotting out the sun. The two combatants, god and monster, battled until the world itself seemed to teeter on the edge of oblivion. And in the end, Thor struck the killing blow. With a final cry, Jormungand collapsed, his massive form writhing before falling still. The earth heaved under his weight, but victory came at a cost. Thor stumbled only 9 steps before the serpent's venom overwhelmed him. He fell beside the beast he had slain, the prophecy fulfilled to its bitter end. Though Jormungand perished, his legacy endured. In death, he marked the death of an age. The gods fell, the world was reshaped, and the stories passed from mouth to mouth, generation after generation. The tale of the world serpent lived on. Some say that when this world was born anew, when green returns to the desolate lands and the gods walk once more, the sea will stir and a new serpent will rise, perhaps not of Loki's blood, but of fate's design. Jormungand remains a symbol not of destruction but of cycles, of beginnings and endings, of chaos and changes that cannot be caged and changed. And so, beneath the crashing waves of time, the echoes of the serpent will still rumble, forever encircling the imagination of those who dare to gaze too long into the unknown. Long before the gods ruled the heavens, before men carved runes into stone all told stories around the firelight. There stood a great tree, so vast and so ancient that time itself seemed to breathe through its bark. This was Yggdrasil, the world tree, the axis of the cosmos, where roots and branches stitched together all of existence. Yggdrasil was no ordinary tree. It stretched across the 9 realms, connecting them like spokes on an eternal wheel. Its crown pierced the heavens, brushing the skies of Asgard. Its trunk rose from the heart of Midgard, the world of men. And deep beneath the soil, its roots twisted into the shadowy realms of Helheim and Niflheim, drinking from the primal waters of creation. At its base, 3 mighty roots reached into the 3 sacred wells. Odurbrunn, the well of fate, where Norns, Odur, Verumbandi, and Skull spun the destinies of all beings. Mimisbrunner, the well of wisdom, guarded by Mimir, the ancient keeper of knowledge. And Havörgrimir, the boiling spring in the icy realm of Niflheim, from which all rivers flowed. Each well fed the tree, sustaining it through eons. But Yggdrasil was not without its burdens. Creatures from all realms made Yggdrasil their home or their hunting ground. Its uppermost branches perched an eagle with no name, whose wings stirred the winds across Midgard. Beneath its eyes sat a hawk called Veraforir, always watching and always silent. At the roots slithered the great serpent Nidhogg, gnawing ceaselessly at the wood, craving rot and ruin. Squirrels like Ratatoskr darted between the eagle and the serpent, delivering insults and messages stirring conflict, as mischief often does. Stags grazed on the tender shoots of its foliage, and unseen insects burrowed within its bark. Yggdrasil bore it all, never falling, though always under threat, just as the world it held was always teetering between creation and collapse. Even the gods of Asgard revered to Yggdrasil. Odin himself, the Allfather, once sacrificed a part of himself to the tree. In his relentless pursuit of wisdom, he hung from its branches for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear without food or drink, staring into the void. At the edge of death, he was granted the knowledge of the runes, powerful symbols that shaped language, fate, and magic. It was said that Odin saw everything during his ordeal: the end of days, the fall of gods, and the rebirth of the world. Yggdrasil had shown him truths too vast for most to grasp. Truths wrapped in pain, but also power. The Norns, sitting beside the well of fate, poured water and sacred clay upon the roots of the tree each day, preserving its strength and sanctity. For as long as Yggdrasil stood, the world endured. But if it were ever to fall, so too would reality itself. And yet, even the world tree was not immune to prophecy. Though Yggdrasil seemed eternal, whispers of its fate had haunted gods and mortals alike. In the hidden folds of the cosmos, the tree groaned under the weight of time and prophecy. Even as it nourished the 9 realms, it bore the scars of chaos, of creatures biting, burrowing, and plotting its undoing. The Norns who tended to its roots each dawn felt tremors, not born of wind or water. The threads they spun grew darker with each passing day. What once hummed the promise of balance now pulsed with a warning. Ragnarok. The fate of the gods loomed like a storm on the horizon. In visions and dreams, seers saw the skies split, the sun vanish, and fire consume the worlds. Yggdrasil, central to all that was and would be, trembled in anticipation of what was written in the bones of destiny. At the beginning of Ragnarok, the great serpent Nidhogg would gnaw faster, deeper, no longer content with the slow decay. The skies would darken as the eagle in Yggdrasil's crown beat its wings in panic. Ratatoskr would scurry furiously, spreading the truth too late that nothing, even the world tree, could stand against fate. The tree would shudder violently, its leaves would fall across realms like dying stars. Its branches would crack, and the weight of existence itself would be too much to bear. And from its base, giants would rise. From its crown, the skies would bleed. The balance would break. And yet, Yggdrasil would not collapse. In the fires of Ragnarok, many gods would fall. Odin to Fenrir, Thor to the world serpent Jormungand, and Loki consumed by his own chaos. Midgard would drown, and Asgard would burn. But even in ruin, Yggdrasil endured, scorched but unbroken. From the ashes, two humans, Lif and Rifrasir, would emerge, having hidden within Yggdrasil's hollow trunk. Protected by the tree's ancient magic, they would become the seed of a new humanity. A younger generation of gods, led by Baldur and Hodor, would return to the reborn world. And Yggdrasil, though battered, would green once again. The eagle would rebuild its nest, the wells would flow anew, and the Norns would resume their work, spinning fresh fates upon a cleaner loom. The creatures that once gnawed and whispered would become part of the new harmony. Yggdrasil's story was never about permanence. It was about persistence. Not even the gods could escape change. But through that change came rebirth, and Yggdrasil, rooted in every world and every soul, stood as the bridge between what was lost and what could be. In the farthest reaches of existence, beyond the cold void of Ginnungagap and the misty vale of Niflheim, there blazed a realm of fire and chaos. Muspelheim, the land of eternal flame. From this inferno rose one of the oldest and most fearsome beings in all the 9 realms. Surtur, the Black One, the Fire Giant, the Scorcher of Worlds. Surtur was no ordinary Jotun. He was as ancient as the cosmos itself, a primeval force born in a time before the gods, before even the ordering of the world, wielding a sword that burned with a light more brilliant than the sun. Surtur stood guard at the edge of Muspelheim, watching the borders of existence with smoldering patience. He did not engage in the petty rivalries of giants or meddle in the affairs of gods. His purpose was singular, etched into the bones of time. He would bring about the end, not by malice or hunger, but by destiny. Surtur was destruction incarnate, but not without reason. His fire was not just to burn, it was to cleanse, to renew. The gods of Asgard knew of Surtur, Odin, in his ceaseless quest for knowledge, had sacrificed much to peer into the ruins and visions of the future. What he saw chilled even his battle-hardened heart. The fire giant standing tall at the twilight of the world, his sword setting the heavens ablaze. For many ages, Surtur remained in Muspelheim, his presence a looming spectre in the prophecies of Ragnarok. While the gods built, fought, and ruled, Surtur waited, his sword burning brand forged in primordial fire, was said to be so hot that it would split the sky when drawn in full wrath. As all the other Jotnar feared him, the gods prepared for him, and yet Surtur did not act. Not yet. As the age of gods waned and the world became more fractured, the signs began to manifest. Fimbulwinter came, 3 long, bitter winters without respite. Brothers turned on brothers, and the bonds that held the realms together began to fray. Fenrir, the giant wolf, grew restless in his bindings. Jormungand stirred beneath the sea, and Loki plotted from his prison. And still, Surtur did not rise, but his sword glowed brighter beneath its sheath. The flames of Muspelheim roared higher, hungrier. The fire giant stood ready, his eyes like molten coals beneath the dark sky, awaiting the horn that would signal the end. And it would come, sooner than expected. When Heimdall's horn sounded across Yggdrasil, Surtur would stride forth, not as a warrior of vengeance, but as the inevitable force of cleansing fire. When Heimdall finally sounded Gjallarhorn, its echo reached all corners of the 9 realms. Asgard trembled, Midgard darkened, and even Hell stirred with unease. But in Muspelheim, it was a signal long awaited. Surtur, ancient and terrible, lifted his burning gaze skyward. The time had come. He drew his sword, and it blazed like a newborn star, brighter than any fire known to man or god. With a voice like a volcano erupting, Surtur called to the sons of Muspel, giants born of flame, chaos, and fury. They followed him as he tore open the gates between realms and marched towards the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that linked Midgard and Asgard. The Bifrost shattered under the weight of his army's fury, a cascade of prismatic light falling into oblivion. Heimdall and the gods met them in battle, their shields gleaming and their weapons raised, but against Surtur, all resistance was futile. He was the firestorm that could not be stopped. In the fields of Vigrid, the armies of gods and giants clashed in the apocalyptic war, foretold in prophecy. Odin faced Fenrir and fell to the great wolf. Thor battled Jormungand and triumphed, only to stumble 9 steps before dying from the serpent's poison. And Loki dueled Heimdall, with both perishing in the struggle. And then came Surtur. Wading through the chaos, he faced Frey, the Vanir god of fertility and prosperity. Frey, once radiant and peaceful, had given away his magical sword long ago for love. Weaponless, he fought valiantly. But even a god could not stand against Surtur's inferno. With one sweep of his flaming blade, Frey fell. The sky blackened as Surtur lifted his sword high. He did not speak. There was no declaration, only fire. He struck, and the heavens split. The world tree Yggdrasil trembled and groaned as flames consumed the branches that connected all life. Mountains cracked, oceans boiled, and the 9 realms began to crumble. Surtur's fire surged across creation, not out of rage or hatred, but because the time had come. It was the burning away of the old to make space for the new. And then, silence. When the fires receded, the world, as it had been, was no more. The gods lay fallen, the land was scorched, the sky was dark. But from the ashes, life began to stir once more. 2 human survivors, Leif and Leif Brasir, emerged from the forests, hiding away during the chaos. They would become the seeds of new humanity. A few gods, Baldur, Hodor, and others returned from death, walking into the world reborn. Surtur himself was gone, consumed by the fire he wielded. He was not meant to reign over a new world, only to unmake the old one. His was a role fulfilled, written in the bones of fate. To this day, when fire rages across forests or volcanoes erupt from the depth of the earth, some say it's an echo of Surtur's flame. He was the beginning of the end, and the end of the beginning. In the early days of the 9 realms, long before the shadow of Ragnarok loomed over Asgard, a beast was born under a sky of uneasy stars. His name was Fenrir, the great wolf of prophecy, son of Loki the shapeshifter and trickster god, and Angraboda, a giantess from Jotunheim. From the moment he opened his eyes, the gods knew something in Fenrir that disturbed them. His coat shimmered like the void between stars. His fangs gleamed with unnatural sharpness. And more unsettling than anything else was the look in his eyes. Not mindless savagery, but a growing, terrible intelligence. Though he was but a cub, the Aesir knew this wolf would one day grow beyond their control. Odin, the All-Father, had seen visions of the end, of Fenrir breaking free from his chains, devouring gods and bringing ruin to the realms. Fearing this, the gods took the wolf into their care, hoping to raise him under watchful eyes. They told themselves what they were doing was right. They told Fenrir that they only sought to protect him. But mistrust fermented in Asgard, and the wolf sensed it. Only Tyr, the god of law and order, treated Fenrir with any true fairness. He fed the wolf, trained him, spoke to him as an equal. Fenrir grew to respect him, perhaps even love him in his own wild way. But not even Tyr could stop what would come next. As Fenrir grew, so did the god's anxiety. The wolf's size became impossible to ignore. He towered over trees, cast shadows over hills, and his growl caused even seasoned warriors to flinch. The gods began to whisper, and then to plot. They decided to bind him. They approached him with tests, pretending it was all in sport. First, they forged a chain called Leidingir, thick and heavy as iron mountains. Fenrir broke it with a flick of his neck. And then came Dromir. Twice as strong, he shattered it like a twig. The gods laughed nervously, masking their unease. Realizing that no ordinary chain would do, Odin sent messages to the dwarves of Staffelheim, master smiths of metal and magic. In secret, they crafted a ribbon called Gleipnir, forged from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, a bear's sinew, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. It was soft as silk, but stronger than any steel. When the gods returned to Fenrir with Gleipnir, his eyes narrowed. "You ask me to trust you," he growled, "but your hearts beat with fear." He agreed to the test, but only if one god would place their hand in his mouth as a gesture of good faith. Only Tyr stepped forward. Fenrir lay still as the ribbon was wrapped around him. He waited and tested it, and then he thrashed. The chain held. He howled, enraged at the betrayal, and closed his jaw around Tyr's wrist, severing the god's hand. Tyr did not scream. He looked into Fenrir's eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry." Bound and betrayed, Fenrir roared his fury to the skies. The gods drove a sword into his jaws, holding them open so he could not bite. His howls became muffled groans, blood mixed with drool. They chained him to a rock on the island of Lingrivi, far from all the realms, and left him there, forgotten, and yet not gone. And there he lay, his eyes burning with hate, body growing colder with each passing age. But prophecy was not undone. It only waited. As seasons came and went, like the breaths of sleeping gods, the world changed. Humans grew, kingdoms rose and fell, and still Fenrir lay bound on the island of Lingrivi, staring at the sunless sky, his hatred ripening like rot. The sword jammed between his jaws had rusted, but it held. His mouth remained pried open, a cruel symbol of silence forced upon him. His chains, crafted from the impossible, never loosened. But time is the great decayer, even of magic. The world was marching towards its end, toward Ragnarok. The seers spoke of it. The stars flickered like omens. Even Omen, the All-Father and architect of Fenrir's imprisonment, felt unease settle deep within the roots of Yggdrasil. The balance of fate could not be held forever. And when the first rooster crowed in Helheim, the bindings trembled. The sky cracked, the seas boiled, and the earth split. And with that rift, Gleipnir finally gave way. Fenrir rose, bigger now than the gods had ever imagined. His shoulders scraped the clouds, his eyes were twin comets streaking with fire and hunger. His mouth, freed and open in a yawn so wide that it split the heavens. With one jaw scraping the sky and the other clawing at the ground, he was no longer just a beast. He was vengeance, made flesh. The gods rallied for the final battle. Odin donned his helmet, took up his spear Gungnir, and rode Sleipnir into the fray. The battlefield was Vigrid, a plain where destiny would either crumble or be fulfilled. Fenrir stormed the battlefield like a living avalanche, devouring the light and tearing through the ranks of the divine and monstrous alike. But his eyes sought one figure, and one only. Odin. The father of the gods met the wolf head-on. He did not flinch. He struck with spear and magic and the fury of 1,000 years' foresight. But fate could not be fooled, and prophecy does not flinch either. With a leap, Fenrir engulfed Odin in its jaws. the Allfather was gone. A silence fell over the field, and then a new voice roared. Vidar, Odin's silent son, stepped forward. The god of vengeance, born for this singular purpose, wore a shoe, stitched from every discarded scrap of leather from across the realm. He wedged it between Fenrir's lower jaw, gripped the upper with both hands, and with a strength born not of muscle, but of prophecy, he tore the wolf's mouth apart. Fenrir howled his final cry that echoed across the realms. The sky bled, the world shook, and the wolf collapsed, dead beside the god he had swallowed. When Ragnarok passed, the realms were ash and silence. Gods dead, monsters fallen, seas swallowing cities, but from the wreckage a new world would rise. And the name Fenrir would be spoken in awe and in dread. To some, he was a monster, a beast that killed many gods. To others, he was a symbol of fear given form, vengeance long denied, of fate written in stone. And yet, beneath the fury, in some lost telling whispers, on the cold northern winds, Fenrir was also a child born to chaos, feared from birth, and broken from betrayal. Not all monsters are born. Some can be made.